Chapter 581 to 582. After returning back to the Uchiha clan district, Itachi did not directly go to his home. He just sent a shadow clone to his home to mask his actions, and then went to Shisui's home. After arriving at Shisui's place, Itachi told him about what happened a while ago, and that the masked man of the Akatsuki organization came to him to make a so-called deal with him. Information about the possible identities of the two Homusubi in exchange for returning Sasuke back, muttered Shisui with a thoughtful face, then asked, "What do you plan to do?" Shisui asked. So because he has no real say in the matter, after all, Sasuke's life is at stake. And they can't take a risk here, as even a small mistake might lead to Sasuke's death. "I have thought about it, and I want to discuss this matter with Kuroto-san and ask for his opinion," said Itachi, to which Shisui agreed. Shisui created a shadow clone to act as his cover. Then together with Itachi, he secretly sneaked out of the Uchiha clan, and then the two went in the direction of Kuroto's home. There was a reason why they were being so cautious despite being in the Uchiha clan district inside the Konoha village. And it's the possibility that the masked man may have left something behind to spy on them and monitor all their actions. Of course, both Shisui and Itachi had the confidence that the masked man wouldn't be able to take them by surprise when they are vigilant, but they didn't want to risk it at this point. After all, currently, they are in a situation where even a little mistake might cause them dearly. So, in this way, Shisui and Itachi together arrived at Kuroto's home, who seemed to have already expected their arrival and welcomed them inside his home with a smile. After getting seated around the kotatsu that already had tea and snacks prepared for the three of them, Shisui and Itachi looked at each other and asked, "Kuroto-san, were you expecting some guests, or did you know that we are coming?" Kuroto answered, "Oh, I expected that the two of you would be coming here soon enough, so I had tea and snacks prepared anyway. That aside, the reason why the two of you came here, if I didn't guess incorrectly, it should be related to the masked man of Akatsuki, visiting Itachi, right?" Shisui was surprised and questioned. "Kuroto-san, how do you know?" Kuroto answered with a smile, "Because not long ago he visited me too, and used my disciple Neji to blackmail me. Obito can use Neji to blackmail Kuroto, so naturally he will not miss the chance to use Sasuke and blackmail Itachi. This wasn't something too difficult to guess, and Kuroto realized it even before he agreed to Obito's so-called deal. As I thought?" Itachi nodded. He wasn't too surprised either and said, "The mysterious masked uchiha of the Akatsuki organization approached me when I was alone at the training grounds near the Uchiha clan district and said that he wanted to make a deal with me. At that time, because he never exited the intangible state, so I couldn't find the right opportunity to use Tsukuyomi on him. Even though I understood that he is probably making just empty promises and doesn't really intend to fulfill his end of the deal, I had no other option but to temporarily agree in order to ensure Sasuke's safety." At this time, Shisui, who was munching on the rice crackers, suddenly thought something and questioned, "Say, Kuroto-san, that masked guy approached Itachi and asked him to investigate the identities of the two Homosubis of Amatsukami. Did he want you to do something similar?" Kuroto took a sip of green tea and nodded. "Yes, he ordered me to use my identity as an Anbu squad captain in order to investigate whatever intelligence Konoha has on Amatsukami. Obito thinks that as the squad captain of the Team Ro, Kuroto might be able to investigate and relay to him all the intelligence that Konoha has about the Amatsukami. As for the reason why he believes that Konoha will have intelligence on Amatsukami, it's simply because the masked man and the majority of the populace of Konoha and other shinobi villages believe that Amatsukami and Konoha are more than likely to be in some sort of cooperative relationship. So Konoha is bound to have some important intelligence about Amatsukami that might prove to be useful for the Akatsuki if they want to defeat Amatsukami. But it's a pity that the masked man is dead wrong. There is no such thing, and only 4 people including Sandaime Hokage, Utatane Koharu, the Anbu commander, and Kuroto are aware of what kind of cooperation a Matsukami has with Konoha. The cooperative relationship between a Matsukami and Konoha is just a verbal agreement. And even that verbal agreement is currently only limited to the commission that Sandaime issued to Homusubi, with the hope that a Matsukami can help Konoha in rescuing the 4 children. As such, the information that Konoha has about a Matsukami is not more than the information that Akatsuki already has about the Amatsukami. Thinking so, Shisui looked at Kuroto and Itachi with a speechless expression. Both the informants or spy that the masked man of the Akatsuki organization tried to develop inside Konoha in order to investigate intelligence about a Matsukami happens to be a member or leader of the said organization. This made Shisui feel funny, and he couldn't help but pity the masked man. At this time, Itachi asked, "Kuroto-san, have you thought about what to do about this issue?" Kuroto put down the empty teacup and nodded. "Yes, I have considered what we can do." Stopping here, instead of directly answering, he questioned back, "But I want to ask you, Itachi, what do you think we should do?" Itachi didn't need to think too much and replied, "A Akatsuki organization wants intelligence on a Matsukami. We can give them what they want, but only the parts we want them to know." Shisui added, "Yes, and using this advantage we have over them in terms of intelligence, we might even be able to ambush them by surprise and possibly eliminate all of them." Kuroto nodded. "My thoughts are the same. But we will have to be patient. The Akatsuki organization won't drop their guards against us so easily." Both Itachi and Shisui nodded. Akatsuki and the masked man in specific have suffered repeated defeats at the hands of a Matsukami, so it is inevitable that they will be very vigilant at the start, but once they confirm that Kuroto and Itachi are not threatening them, they might slowly relax their vigilance, which will allow Kuroto to take advantage of that negligence of theirs and lead them in the palm of his hands and possibly even eliminate both Obito and Nagato. When thinking of this, Kuroto glanced at Itachi with his Tenseigan. At present, the only person who can effectively neutralize Obito's threat is Itachi, who has the sword of Totsuka, so his presence is very important. After the events of that night, when Kuroto got free, he asked Itachi and Shisui about the ins and outs of the cause of their disappearance and also gained all the information he could about their experience. Itachi explained how he managed to get the sword of Totsuka and Yata mirror, and Shisui explained how he accidentally ventured into the Nekomata domain and learned senjutsu to come out of that domain. Kuroto's interest in the Nekomata domain wasn't too much, as it's not strange for more than 3 sacred places to exist where one can practice senjutsu, and he, himself, is in contact with one of those. So his attention was mostly focused on the sword of Totsuka, as well as the Yama mirror that Itachi managed to obtain. After learning all the information about the 2 artifacts, Kuroto understood that they are bound to the user's soul and cannot be given away without damaging the soul. Of course, Kuroto did feel a little regretful that he wouldn't be able to use the 2 artifacts, but it couldn't be helped, so he didn't bother about it. At the same time, he also understood why Itachi and the canon never entrusted the 2 artifacts to Sasuke. It is well known that Itachi and the canon left behind almost everything he could to Sasuke before his death. Even his Mangekyu Sharingan pair was meant to be transplanted to Sasuke after he becomes blind. The only 2 things Itachi did not leave behind for Sasuke included his sword of Totsuka and the Yata mirror. Why did he not leave those 2 artifacts behind? This question always made Kuroto confused. Was it because Itachi did not want to give them to Sasuke? This is obviously impossible. And after understanding Itachi's experience, Kuroto finally understood. It's not that Itachi did not want to give the 2 artifacts to Sasuke. It's just that he couldn't due to 2 specific reasons. The first reason is that once the 2 artifacts are bound to someone's soul, they will not detach him unless the soul of the said person is completely destroyed, which means even if the said person died, the 2 artifacts will remain attached to his soul. So if Itachi were to give the 2 artifacts to Sasuke, The first thing he needed to do was to destroy his soul, of course. Knowing Itachi, he would have done so without any hesitation, yet he chose not to. There is another reason for this. And this is the second reason. Even if the soul of the said person is destroyed and the artifacts are detached from him, neither can they be manually given to the next person, nor will they go to the next best candidate. Instead, they will just return to the place from where they were obtained. This means if the next user wants to obtain the two artifacts, then they must pass the trial from scratch. The trial is related to defeating one's inner darkness. But can everyone accomplish such a feat? Defeating one's inner darkness may sound easy, but it is much more than it may seem on the surface. The possibility of failure was very high, and failure would mean that the said person would forever be trapped inside the gourd, while the inner darkness will take over. Itachi, who understood Sasuke's character and the hatred in his heart, knew very well that Sasuke might not be able to defeat his inner darkness at that point, so he didn't want Sasuke to take such a big risk. A few days ago, Akatsuki Organization's base of operation, the Art of Shadow Clones, X2, poof, poof. With two simultaneous poofs of white smoke, two figures appeared out of thin air in the dingy underground cave. The two figures that suddenly appeared looked identical to their respective casters, Sasuke and Neji, and silently stood beside each of the two. Looking at each of the two shadow clones created by Sasuke and Neji, Shinichi smiled slightly and nodded. Yes, although there are still some flaws in the shadow clones the two of you have created, it should be more than enough to fool a chunin who doesn't rely on dojutsu. When Sasuke and Neji heard the praise, they were suddenly overjoyed. The shadow clone jutsu is not an ordinary jutsu. Its difficulty is ranked at B rank. And even among all the B-rank jutsu, it is among the most difficult and unsafe ones. Because shadow clone jutsu causes rapid depletion of chakra reserves, it is considered dangerous. As such, usually only those of at least Jonin level can safely use this jutsu. And this is just the shadow clone jutsu, not the advanced multi-shadow clone jutsu, which is considered unsafe to the point of being listed as a forbidden jutsu. Because of the dangerous nature of the shadow clone jutsu, the parents generally don't allow young children to come in contact with this B-rank jutsu. As such, neither Sasuke nor Neji was allowed to touch this jutsu. But Shinichi is different from them. He has no such concern. Uchiha Shinichi, who has seen the depths of the shinobi world from the eyes of Akatsuki, knows better than those living in Konoha that the shinobi world is an ever-evolving battlefield, where only the fittest, finest, courageous, cleverest, and the luckiest survives. And if someone wishes to survive, then regardless of which category they fit into, they must at least have the ability to protect themselves. As such, Shinichi, who was bored as hell because of staying at this base for so long and not being able to do anything, decided to teach the shadow clone jutsu to the two kids. But Shinichi must admit that he was really surprised by the talent of the two kids. He didn't expect that the two children, Sasuke and Neji, would be so talented that in just a few tries, both of them managed to learn the shadow clone jutsu. In fact, rather than Sasuke, whose talent he had already expected, Shinichi was more surprised by Hyuga Neji's talent. The kid might be a child belonging to the branch division of the Hyuga clan, but Shinichi has personally witnessed that Neji is more of a natural genius than Sasuke. Even if Sasuke has already awakened the Sharingan in Shinichi's eyes, Neji is still more genius. There's no doubt about this. At the same time, Shinichi also understood why did Hyuga Kuroto decide to take Hyuga Neji as his disciple. The best thing about Neji is his level-headed character and calm demeanor, which somewhat reminds Shinichi of Kuroto, only with the lack of wickedness. When thinking of Neji's sensible character, Shinichi turned toward Sasuke, who was extremely excited and felt triumphant after mastering just the shadow clone jutsu, and his face sank because Sasuke sort of reminded Shinichi of himself. This kid, can't let him become a reckless guy like me. Him. Shinichi coughed lightly to attract the attention of the two kids, then scowled. Sasuke, what's there to be so happy about? All you have done is learn a jutsu. Learning is just the first step, and it is also the easiest step. As far as I see, you have yet to make it yours. You must not forget one important point. However strong or useful of a jutsu you learn unless you make it yours, which means, unless you are able to smoothly deploy it in your combat tactics, it is just a jutsu, not your jutsu. Remember, whether a jutsu proves to be useful in the battle, or it becomes just wastage of chakra is only a moment of single thought. So don't think that just because you learned a jutsu, you have mastered it as well. Learning a jutsu means being able to use a jutsu, but mastering it means being capable of using the same jutsu in the midst of the battle to gain any kind of advantage over your enemy. Sasuke smiled contemptuously and said, Shinichi-san, you are looking down on me too much. Don't forget that I am the youngest awakener of Sharingan. Sasuke isn't aware that Uchiha Izumi awakened her Sharingan at the age of 6. So I am the most genius in the Uchiha clan, even my Nii-san and Shisui Nii-san, who are both considered unparalleled geniuses of the Uchiha clan pales in my comparison. Shinichi squinted at Sasuke and nodded to himself. Yeah, this kid is definitely like how I used to be when I was his age. But before Shinichi could say anything to Sasuke, Neji respectfully bowed to him and expressed his gratefulness. Uchiha Shinichi-san, thank you for teaching us a jutsu. Because of Neji's respectful attitude towards him, Shinichi was a little embarrassed and waved his hand awkwardly. No worries. All I did was teach you two the shadow clone jutsu. It's not that big of a deal, and sooner or later the two of you would have learned it anyway. So there's no need to be so polite and respectful. Neji nodded lightly. All right. After that, Shinichi shifted his attention back to Sasuke, who had a smug smile that made him very uncomfortable, and asked with twitching eyebrows, Sasuke, I remember that you earlier mentioned that Shisui and your brother Itachi generally teach you stuff. So what do they usually teach you? And how do they teach you? Heh. Nii-san and Shisui Nii-san teach me a lot of things, and I have already mastered everything they have taught me up until now, including all the shuriken jutsu and taijutsu of the Uchiha clan, said Sasuke with a proud smile, and then added, ever since I awakened my Sharingan, all my training sessions with Nii-san and Shisui Nii-san include actual combat training in which I am able to fight back and forth with the two of them. Learned all the shuriken jutsu and taijutsu of the Uchiha clan, actual combat training with Shisui and Itachi, and you are able to fight back and forth with the two of them? Shinichi raised his eyebrows in shock, then grinned. No wonder you, are such a brat. Both Shisui and Itachi seem to adore you too much, and as such they are spoiling you rotten. Sasuke frowned and questioned, what's that supposed to mean? Shinichi shook his head and continued, well, I guess I can't blame them. They do look at you as their younger brother and wants to protect you and can't really bring themselves to hurt you. But still, I didn't expect that even at this age, you are still playing ninja games. When I or Shisui or Itachi were your age, we're already on the battlefields of war between nations. Sasuke was displeased and said with a pout, it's not a ninja game. We even use real shuriken and kunai. Oh, you think so? You think that Shisui and Itachi are serious in the so-called combat training? Asked Shinichi with a smirk. Sasuke replied immediately, obviously. Is there even a need to ask such a stupid question? Shinichi nodded lightly and said, in that case, how about we also do combat training? I'm going to show you what real combat training is like. All right. I am ready anytime, said Sasuke with a cold snort. Shinichi grinned ear to ear and beckoned Sasuke to attack him. Sasuke, maybe it's not such a good idea, whispered Neji to Sasuke. While looking at Shinichi, Neji had a bad feeling. He is different from Sasuke. Neji is trained harshly by his Otu-san, and can feel that Uchiha Shinichi is even more dangerous than his Otu-san. Therefore, he was a little worried about Sasuke. Sasuke said to Neji, "Don't worry. Even if can't kill him, I should at least be able to defend myself." Neji wanted to continue to persuade Sasuke, but seeing Sasuke's face that showed he has no intention to back down, Neji swallowed his words and moved to the side. With the coast clear, Shinichi folded, his hands over his chest, and said, "Come at me with all you've got, kid. Otherwise, this won't even be a tad bit interesting." Sasuke saw that Shinichi was being casual, so he issued a fair warning. "Shinichi-san, because you taught me a jutsu, so I will give you a fair warning. You have to be careful. Otherwise, you will get seriously hurt." As he said so, Sasuke transferred chakra into his eyes, causing the one-tomo Sharingan to activate, then quickly weaved the hand seals of a fire-style jutsu and shouted, "Fire-style! Fireball jutsu!" Boom! Suddenly, a large fireball sprayed out of Sasuke's mouth. It shouldered the surrounding air and rushed straight towards who stood akimbo not too far away. The huge fireball engulfed the entire room in intense, fiery heat, and accompanied by a howling sound, slammed into Shinichi's location, causing an explosion big enough to spread cracks all over the place. Whoosh. Huh? Sasuke raised his eyebrows and looked at the surroundings with a frowned expression. Where is he? Sasuke is not completely certain, but he feels that he did catch a glimpse of Shinichi's shadow whizzing past the fireball a moment before the fireball hit the target location. Therefore, Shinichi shouldn't have been hurt. Neji, who had his Byakugan activated from the start, saw it clearly. The moment that fireball was about to come close to him, Shinichi used a body flicker jutsu to disappear from his position and rushed towards... "Sasuke is careful. He is coming for you." Whoosh! Even before Neji issued the warning, Shinichi had already crossed the distance and stood in front of Sasuke. The dark shadow that suddenly appeared over him gave Sasuke a bad feeling, and even before Sasuke had the opportunity to make any reflexive action or look up, he felt his body involuntarily arch as intense pain came from his abdomen. Smash! Bang! Crack! Plop! Followed by the intense pain, his feet were lifted off of the ground, and by the time he came to understand what was happening, he was heavily smashed into one of the walls, causing the rocks to sink in and cracks to spread all over it as he collapsed on the ground with a muffled sound. Neji, who was at the side, looked at the entire process and was dumbfounded. In fact, it would be better to say that he was barely able to understand what exactly happened, as it happened in a very short time. And all he saw was Uchiha Shinichi's figure abruptly appearing in front of Sasuke, and the very next instant Sasuke's body flew out and crashed into the wall. When Neji looked at Shinichi, he noticed that Shinichi didn't even have his Sharingan activated and couldn't help but mutter in shock, "Is this the true strength of a member of the Akatsuki organization?" At this time, a spiraling whirl appeared in the room, from which the masked man walked out. He casually glanced at Sasuke, who had collapsed on the ground and hadn't recovered yet, and said to Shinichi with a chuckle, "Shinichi, don't go too far." Shinichi said with a smile, "Don't worry, I'm not going to kill them. I just wanted him to clearly see what the shinobi world is like." The masked man narrowed his eyes slightly. He looked at Sasuke for a moment, then glanced at Neji on the other side, and finally turned towards Shinichi. The masked man is quite curious. It is well known within Akatsuki that Shinichi is extremely lazy, careless, and sloppy, but suddenly he has become so attached to the two children that were kidnapped from Konoha. If it was just Sasuke, the masked man might still be able to accept it with a pinch of salt. After all, Sasuke is a genius. Uchiha is worth training to be recruited into the Akatsuki organization. But why Hyuga Neji? Given Shinichi's arrogant and condescending character, he should be dismissive of Hyuga Neji. After all, Hyuga Neji is not only a member of the branch division of the Hyuga clan, but he is also Hyuga Kuroto's disciple, and the masked man knows that Shinichi has a grudge against Hyuga. Kuroto. So why? Could it be?